For the last 35 years of my life, spirituality has been a central and primary root in my life. It started when I was about 5 or 6 years old, first getting baptized and confirmed in the church, and has continued since then over the decades as I've navigated numerous different traditions and practices, Western, Eastern, and indigenous. And when I think back to when I was first getting started, though, I thought the highest attainment of spiritual life was to be a monk, was to be removed from so much of the hardship and messiness of life. If I'm being honest, I think this idea of transcendence was one of the initial appeals. I wanted to avoid the messiness and the difficulty, the pain and the heartache that I found not only in my internal world, but I found characterized the external world as well. And so now looking back over my life now, reflecting on my spiritual journey, I see that a lot remains the same. I still want to optimize and get the most from myself and life. I want to have a deep connection with the power and presence in all things. Furthermore, I want to ease suffering in myself as well as the world around me. And yet, a lot has changed too. I no longer am as interested in dogma and rules and indoctrination. I'm curious about the questions and the complexities, the uncertainties, the stillness and silence, the presence that is underneath all of it. And yet, perhaps one of the most biggest changes is that I no longer think the highest expression of spiritual life and practice is to be removed from the world. Rather, I think spiritual life calls on us to be actively engaged, to live from a place that is loving, awake, aware, and actively participating in the world, to try and be the change that we wish to see all around us. And goodness knows that that is really necessary. If we look at the world around us, there is so much shadow and suffering, acute and pervasive everywhere. And we see that we have COVID threatening lives and families. We have political extremism threatening the foundations of democracy. We have economic and social inequalities that are threatening the basic tenets of justice. We have climate change that is offering perhaps the greatest threat of all as we look ahead, with the very real potentials of ecological and societal collapse. So yes, there is a need to take action, and that is our spiritual call right now, to be the change we wish to see in our own lives so that we can bring the change we want externally. And despite all the differences that we see in the world around us, from pandemics and politics, climate change and inequalities, they all, I believe, have spiritual roots. They emanate from ways of being, how we think, act, feel, and relate with ourselves and each other. Fundamentally, I think we are facing a crisis of consciousness, and this necessitates spiritual engagement, life, and practice to really address this. And I think many people agree with this, and yet we're all, or a lot of us, are uncertain. What is that path forward that can provide the wisdom and guidance that enriches our inner lives while brings about transformation in the external environments? Unfortunately, a lot of religions are the source of violence, conflict, and hatred, which are only perpetuating and making worse the problems that we face. So what is the path forward? And I think, fortunately, it's all around us and always has been. And it's the natural world. Our relationships and experiences with the planet, I think, have always been spiritual. Not to mention that these relationships point to a deeper belonging and participation in the great web and circle of life, through which we are all relation and kin with our fellow beings, humans and ecological alike. And for all these reasons that I'm really excited that the Eco-Psychology Initiative's next class is going to be looking at this intersection. We're calling the class Eco-Inspired Spirituality, or Nature-Inspired Spirituality as well. And so we think that we're going to be providing you with these sacred and timeless teachings, practices, and experiences that can bring such revitalization and deepening into your spiritual life, as well as offering wisdom and guidance for better engaging the world from a place that is rooted, open, and balanced, that we can be catalysts for the change that we want to see in the world. In addition, we're going to be looking at what are these ways of being, this underlying consciousness, what we call ego consciousness, that causes a lot of the suffering. Not to mention the antidote to that, a more earth-based approach to how we think, act, feel, and relate, what we call eco-consciousness, that we think can bring about the very types of solutions and transformations we are wanting. This class is going to have two different components. One is an experiential and immersive quality that is found through our webinars. It's often one of the highlights for many of our participants, and we really prioritize coming together with a diverse group of people from across the globe to listen and learn and connect, to foster a sense of community, nourishment, and support for our inner spiritual lives as well as our outer spiritual engagements. The other aspect of this class is going to be self-guided, where you, with each of the 4 modules, will receive a pre-recorded lecture and practices, reflections, and resources from which you can attend to whenever you have the time, that will be devoted to a number of different subjects that we think pertinent at that intersection of nature and spirituality. So I hope this sounds interesting. I hope you'll enjoy us. I'm really excited about it and look forward to sharing and learning with all of you. If you have interest, you can go to our website, ecopsychologyinitiative.com. You can send us an email, info@ecopsychologyinitiative.com. And regardless if you're going to join us or not, I leave you just with these closing thoughts. One of the core messages and truths that we believe as part of EPI is that nature knows the way, and it offers the wisdom and guidance that we need to address so many things in our inner worlds and outer environments as well. And we think especially to deal with the worldly uprooting, disturbance, and turbulence that we're all facing, and our inner spiritual worlds. And so we think that nature knows the way for this wisdom, and we're excited to share and be a part of that. And whether you join us or not, I hope you feel rooted and connected in your inner worlds, as well as taking action to be part of the healing and change, regeneration that our world so needs of us, and that you find inspiration and guidance from the earth, remembering that nature does know the way. I hope your year is starting off well. I hope you're healthy and happy. We send our best wishes.